Welcome everybody to another episode of Tech Adventures. My name is Jeff and I'm here on the Gulf of Mexico today, and I've been inspired to show you how to install Ansible on macOS. So join me now. Welcome to Ansible Installation. In this lesson, I'll walk you through the installation of the Ansible Controller on macOS, and we'll set up your Linux Automation Basecamp. So you might ask, why use a Mac as an Ansible controller? And I say, why not? I already use a Mac laptop at work to manage Linux servers from the terminal, so it makes a really good use case. So Ansible is a useful tool for maintaining your home Linux network. It's a great way to leverage your Mac to maintain multiple servers at home, for example, installing and updating packages. Now you can also use your Mac as an Ansible controller in your corporate infrastructure. It's a good option if you like to use it in lieu of a dedicated server. Introduction. Ansible is an open-source infrastructure automation engine. It's agentless and manages Linux machines over the SSH protocol. Ansible code, also called playbooks, are written in YAML. This lesson is a good starting point for Linux administrators and automation teams looking to leverage this powerful provisioning, deployment, and management tool. In this lesson, you'll learn about a few popular Linux administrator use cases and how to install an Ansible controller on macOS. You'll also learn how to create a useful playbook. Ansible is an invaluable tool for managing your Linux infrastructure. Here are some popular uses. Patching, for running Yum updates. Package installation. Health checks, running pings, disk space checks, and memory checks. Validation, checking running services, scanning for disk mounts, verifying package installations, etc. Deployment and configuration management, for server builds and configuration changes and modifications. Controller installation overview. Since processing is done on target systems, the Ansible controller requires minimal hardware resources. The preferred installation method for macOS is to use PIP to securely connect to the Python package index. PIP is a package management system written in Python for the installation and management of software packages. Now, if you have Ansible 2.9 or older already installed on your Mac, then it must be uninstalled first. macOS controller requirements. A dedicated machine is recommended. At least 4 gigs of RAM. Now, Python 2 is no longer supported and has been deprecated, so Python 3 is required. So Python 3.5 and higher. Now, Homebrew is a package manager for macOS that makes it easier to install and update applications and utilities, and we're going to use this to install Python 3. Recommended macOS version is 10.13 or above. And it will work on 10.12 and older with an upgraded PIP. So for this demonstration, I'm using a MacBook Pro, and it's got 16 gig of RAM, a quad-core i7 processor, and it's running Catalina 10.15. So let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is install the Homebrew package manager. So we're going to go to the website. And we're on the Homebrew website, and if you scroll down, right on the top here actually, you can just copy this command. And that's all we have to do, and we'll move over to the terminal and install. Okay, so now let's install Homebrew. Press enter. And then it's off. So we'll let this finish, and then we'll come back. Okay, so Homebrew is finished installing, and we're ready to go. Okay, and now we're going to download PIP. It's a pretty small download. And then we're going to install PIP. privilege escalation. Okay, and then once PIP is installed, we can install Python. And Python is already installed on this machine. So we're good to go. Okay, so at this point, we can uninstall any previous versions of Ansible if we need to, if we're running Ansible 2.9 or lower. And we'll just clear our screen first. And as you can see, it's not installed on this machine. Okay, so now we're going to install Ansible. And I'll provide all these commands in the reference. And it's going to download and begin installing. Now this can take a few minutes. So what I'm going to do is pause this recording and we'll come back when it's finished. Okay, so that took about 3 to 4 minutes to finish, so not too bad. And now we have Ansible installed. And to validate, we can check the Ansible version. So we're running here 2.10.5. Okay, and now that we have Ansible installed, we're going to do some configuration. So the first thing we'll do is make sure we have an Ansible directory in our home directory. So I've got my home directory here, and I've already created an Ansible directory. So that's in here. And once you have your Ansible directory, we can create an Ansible config file. I'll open this up. And the only thing we're going to add for now is this host key checking. And we're going to disable this host key checking so we can use our root login to run Ansible plays instead of having to use SSH keys. And we'll use SSH keys, and I'll show you how to configure those in a different lesson. So there's a lot of different settings you can use in this Ansible config file. We're just going to keep it simple for now. Okay, so now that we have the Ansible config set up, there's another thing we need to do on the Mac in order to get SSH to work, and that's installing SSH pass. And we're going to use homebrew to install that. And homebrew will update before it tries to install something. And this has already been installed, so it is here with version 1.06. All right, so that wraps up the configuration. It's a very simple configuration, and it can get more complex, but this will get us started. Okay, so I promised we would automate a task. So let's automate a yum update. And let's make sure you're in the root of your Ansible directory. And I've already created this yum update.yaml playbook. So let's look at this. Okay, so it's a very simple yum update task using a module, a yum update module. So you can also use shell commands, but for this demonstration, we're going to use the module. So for the host, we're using all hosts in our host file. We're going to become user root, and then here's just one task. So we're going to update the cache, going to install all available patches with the star to the latest version, and for this instance, we're going to exclude the Docker packages. Now, if you're not a coder by nature, it's worth it to mention that it's best practice to use a code editor like Visual Studio Code, or even something like Sublime Text as an editor for creating your YAML, your playbooks. It just makes it easier to troubleshoot spacing issues and things like that. So now that we have our playbook, we need to make sure that we have a host file. And I've got one here called hosts. You can call it whatever you'd like. And in this host file, I just have one host. So we're going to call this when we run our Ansible playbook. Okay, so let's run our yum update playbook. Use the Ansible playbook command. Our inventory is going to be hosts. Yum update.yml is the name of the playbook. The user is root. Going to ask for the password and medium verbosity. Gathering facts. We're running the task for yum update. And in this case, there's nothing to do on the host, so it's completely updated, so that's a good sign. So let's do one more playbook. And we're going to list the yum repos. Let's take a look at this yum repo list playbook. And this one we're going to use the shell command. We're going to run yum repo list. We're going to register the output as yum or as repo list underscore output. And we're going to debug this and write standard out. So let's run this one. Inventory is hosts. Yum repo list. YML. User is root. And medium verbosity. Going to list the repos on Thunderdome, and there we go. So you can see how this has come in very handy with multiple servers. So that's it for this lesson, and I thank you for joining me.